Hey everybody. Hi, welcome. Welcome to weekly live Q&A. My name is Athena and this is the global community for adult survivors of complex trauma, childhood trauma, trauma in the form of abuse. If you are here on this channel, perhaps you are in your adult years and you're dealing with situations and you're not really sure why life is so hard, you tend to dissociate. Perhaps you just have a list of things to do every single day and you just can't get any of them done. Perhaps you are ranging from I'm feeling really uncomfortable in my interpersonal relationships. I'm unable to manage my money. I'm having trouble with my spouse. My relationship with my kids isn't good. I'm not able to hold down a job. I'm struggling with my finances. It affects, attachment trauma affects every single area of our lives. If we experienced lack of connection or lack of attachment with our primary caregivers when we were younger. So I just want you to know that if that's you, you're not alone. There are almost 1 billion of us. There are millions upon millions upon millions of us that are living with these types of things. So we're just going to sit back here and I'm going to answer some questions tonight. I have a couple of screen shares I would like to share with you, and we will continue this topic for as long as we need. I know that these videos are only an hour long and YouTube wants me to make videos that are like 15 minutes long, and I have a hard time being able to cover big topics in 15-minute chunks. So appreciate you guys taking the time out of your life to be here and to make your recovery journey a priority. We've all been showing up here every single Monday or once a week for about 4 years now. So I'm grateful to be here. 4 years is a long time for all of us to be getting to know one another, and I'm so grateful that you continue to choose to be here. So if you're new and this is your first time visiting, I just want to welcome you personally and let you know that this is a safe place. This is a safe place where trolls are not allowed. It's a safe place for you to ask your questions and for you to feel heard. Join the conversation, support others, receive support. This is a safe place. The trolls and the unkind people who choose to be unkind to others are blocked and they're never welcome back, ever. So we do our very best to make this safe. Obviously, we're human, and where humans are, there is human error, but we will always do our very best to make sure this is a safe place for you, the adult survivor of childhood abuse, who was traumatized and is struggling now in adulthood, to feel safe and to come every single week. That's what we've been doing, and that's what we're going to continue to do. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sending in your questions. You can place your questions over in the chat box if you're here on a live stream. If you're watching this on a replay or on a Roku device, I'm so grateful that you're here. So, so, so grateful. Please leave your questions and your comments in the comment box below the description section of this video. And we'll do our very best to answer your questions. And I'll be answering whatever questions are sent in within the next 15, 20 minutes or so. I'll answer those questions tonight. I'll do the best I can. And then we'll continue on with this series dedicated to attachment trauma and dissociation, and how attachment trauma affects a child, what that looks like in early childhood, adolescent years, teen years, young adult years, and into adulthood, and how we can learn healthy ways of coping with the traumatic feelings that we have. Remember what we talk about a lot on this channel, the cumulative nature of trauma. So when you experience something that's traumatic today and you're like, well, this thing happened a long time ago over here, and I thought I already worked through it in therapy. I went to a counselor. I've done all the work. I've done my work, yet something's happening over here today and it's affecting me as though I never did any of the work, as though I haven't healed. And that's because the cumulative nature of trauma means that you'll experience something present day and it will remind your body, not necessarily your mind, but your body, of a similar feeling that your body had way back a long time ago. Perhaps it's a feeling of unsafety. Perhaps it's a feeling of abandonment. Perhaps it's a feeling of fear or uncertainty, or a feeling of being flooded or overwhelmed, or it triggers something in you from a long time ago. And then it feels, if you're living with PTSD or complex PTSD symptoms, which are listed over in the About section of the YouTube channel. And you can also type out the word complex trauma, right click, and then go to Wikipedia, and you can see a description of what CPTSD symptoms are. If you're having flashbacks, if you're having body memories, if you're feeling like you're stuck and you just can't move forward, there is help. This is not a place for professional medical care or licensed mental health care. We are simply here as trauma-informed peer support for you. And we want you to know that we care. And we have tons of free groups over on Facebook. We have groups that are paid groups that are affordable care. For a low monthly payment, you can receive live calls with other people just like you every single day. You can email Lisa at cptfoundation.org and let her know you're interested in getting into either a free or a paid group, which means you would participate in the daily calls and have access to all of the archived calls, which have been going on now for about a month and a half, about a month or so. So already there are about 30 hours of support you could be listening to at your leisure. And it's for a low monthly cost of $50 a month. So again, the Facebook groups are safe and they're private and no one can see you, and those are free. And then the daily calls are $50 a month. And then of course I'm here every Monday answering your questions live, and I always will be here on YouTube answering your questions every Monday, and that's always free as well. So welcome, welcome. Again, whether it's your first time or you've been here for 4 years, I'm grateful that you're here, and I'm hoping to be able to answer your questions tonight and provide you with some much needed trauma-informed, compassionate support, because you deserve it. We are worth it, right? Hashtag because we are worth it. I'm going to go ahead and check and see if anyone has sent in any questions so far. And, oh, I don't want to forget something. First of all, thank you guys for sending in your questions. Thank you to I Still Found Hope. Thank you to Tracy. Thank you to Hunter. Thank you to Katie and John Harvey. And, but before I forget, I don't want to forget to tell you, if you are one of those who signed up to be notified about the daily recovery support calls and you have not received an email, or you have received an email, you either have or haven't, I'm not sure, but you should have received an email. And if you have received the email because you already signed up for it, and it's June 18th, 2018 today, then you will be offered $20 a month. It's only $20 a month for anyone who had signed up a long time ago, and you guys are interested in getting the $20 a month. So that is that rate is good for the remainder of June. And then after that, after the month of June is over, then if you already received your email, then the normal price of $50 a month is what applies. And you guys should already have received an email because you already signed up for it a long time ago. So, or if you're in the Facebook groups, and then you should have already learned about that. I think I posted in the Facebook groups about that. And if I didn't, I will. So $20 a month for anyone who already signed up. And then moving forward, obviously, for those who didn't already sign up, then it's $50 a month. And many of you already signed up $50 a month because it's just something that you just found out about and you signed up. So you should already have an email. And thank you for those who have already sent in your questions. I want to quickly discuss what attachment styles are involved, different attachment styles. So attachment, basically attachment is the way that we securely cling to or recognize or get to know or attach to our primary object, our primary caregiver. Typically, this is a mother, but not always. It could be a father, whoever is in charge of taking care of you on a daily basis. That is what attachment is. A child, when they are born from birth to around the ages of 6 or 8, early childhood attachment, that's when healthy bonds are formed. That's when our personality is formed and the way we show up in the world and the way that we respond to others based on how we are looked at, how our emotional needs are met, how our physical needs are met. But truly, it hugely leans on how our emotional needs either are or are not met. So we're going to talk about attachment styles tonight. I have a couple of screen shares for you, and then I'm going to answer your questions. So I feel like I'm forgetting to tell you something. Let me take a drink of water and then think if I can remember what I'm supposed to be telling you if I have forgotten something. One moment, please, while I get a drink of water. Okay, let me just see. Hope you guys can hear me okay. Wow, there's like over 50 of you guys here. That's awesome. I'm so happy that you guys have chosen to be here. So what we're going to do, okay, I'm going to do screen share so that you guys can understand what different attachment styles there are, and you can sort of go, I'm leaning towards, I think I'm experiencing this type of attachment style. I think this might describe me. I think this might describe me when I was younger, and then as I've gotten older, I've started feeling this way, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just going to read through. I'm going to show you one screen share that has body language. There are silhouettes of body language. It's a very, very, very helpful visual, especially for survivors. We are such visual creatures, survivors of trauma. We need to see it with our own two eyes. We need to be able to gaze upon what it is that we're learning and what we're talking about. Many of us are visual learners. And I forget the word for visual and audio together. It's like kinesthetic, or I forget the word, but many of us are very, very visual. So the first screen share I'm going to share with you is how you'll be able to look at the body language of what the different attachment styles are. We're going to go through it really rapidly. And then the second screen share I'll bring up so that you can read through them at your own leisure while I'm talking and answering some questions. Okay. So again, thank you so much for being here. So happy you chose to spend this evening with us. I know it's 60 minutes out of your life that you'll never get back. So I'm hoping that it's extremely valuable for you. And let me know if you could in the chat box, if you can see this screen share that I'm going to share with you. And thank you in advance for any thumbs up that you decide to give this video. It does help. The people at YouTube and Google place these videos in other people's suggested video feed, and more trauma survivors actually find our videos because of your thumbs up. And we always need I always need to remind and request you to thumbs up the video, because there are the thumbs downers. The thumbs downers are always going to be out there. They thumbs down whatever videos they come across just for funsies, or just because they're feeling like it on any given day. So we gotta outweigh the thumbs downers by doing more thumbs up, and give yourselves a thumbs up for being here, for choosing to be here. Let me know if you can see this screen share okay. I hope you can see that okay. The 4 types of attachment are secure, ambivalent, avoidant, and disorganized. So hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Let me speak into the microphone. Here we go. So children that experience a secure attachment with their caregiver, they use their caregivers as a secure base for exploration. Remember, curious babies are healthy babies. Curious babies are healthy babies. If we have time to be curious and to play, it means that we're healthy. A lot of children grow up in an environment that is quite toxic or volatile or scary or frightening or violent, and they don't have time to be curious or to explore anything, and they don't have time to play. And so that interrupts their attachment. So secure attachment, children with secure attachment use their caregivers as a secure base for exploration. They show appropriate distress when the primary object or the caregiver leaves, and they are comforted when the primary object or the caregiver returns. So once the primary object or the caregiver returns and they receive comfort from that, they just continue exploring. They continue being curious about their toes or their fingers, and they suck on everything, or they find their belly button. Like, certain things happen at different ages. Curious babies are healthy babies. They have time to be curious and sort of explore and figure the world out, and they need a safe place to figure that out in. So babies and children that securely attached to their primary object or their primary caregiver, they may be comforted by strangers like nannies or a different person in the family of origin or a babysitter, but they show a very clear preference to the primary object, the primary caregiver. So the next, and see the body language? Look at the body language on the left-hand side of the screen. Where there are two adults, and then the children are sort of looking up to and reaching out to those adults. And that's a secure attachment. Ambivalent attachment, children who experience ambivalent attachment, they don't use the caregiver, the primary object, as a secure base for exploration. And they protest or cry or scream before the caregiver even leaves. It's as though they're anticipating that the caregiver is going to leave. They're very upset about the primary object leaving, and they're slow to warm up to the primary object or the caregiver when they return to them finally. These children express concern about the caregiver's location, and they're seeking contact, but then they're resisting contact, like in an angry way, once they actually get back in touch with this primary object or caregiver. So they're hot, they're cold, they're angry, they're fussy, they want up, they want down, they just are not sure. That is a sign of a child who is experiencing ambivalent attachment. They are not easily calmed by strangers. And in this particular relationship with the child who's experiencing ambivalent attachment, they always feel anxious because the caregiver's availability is never consistent. And notice the language being used here, always and never. And that's a child's language. They see things in black and white. Someone's either always there for them or they're never there for them. And if they're experiencing ambivalent attachment, it's because the primary object or the primary caregiver is not consistent in their emotional or physical availability for the child. And just glance at the body language being used here, with the two adults being over to the left-hand side and the child by themselves wanting to walk towards them, but pausing. They're really unsure. They're not necessarily positive what they want to do. They're standing still. They want to walk towards them, but they're really not sure. The body language is key here. So the third type of attachment is avoidant attachment. And these children show little emotional sharing while they are playing, and few signs of emotion when the caregiver leaves or returns. So notice that it mentions little emotion. They have somewhat of a flat affect. They are, they sort of look the other way, or they're not very, they're not consistently looking at their primary object, and they're not engaging with the primary object or caregiver while they're playing. Children who are experiencing secure attachment love to discover and explore, and then show the primary object what they have discovered or explored, so that the primary object or caregiver can make a facial expression, and then those mirror neurons are lit up, and the baby gets excited when the primary object discovers what they have explored and discovered, and there's mirroring going on there, and that's healthy. So in avoidant attachment, these children, again, are showing a flat affect or a low affect when they're offered affection from the primary object, and they treat strangers similarly to their primary object or their caregivers. These children may express a lack of attachment at all, sort of just, they don't really attach. They're sort of, by themselves, or they don't really have an interest, and they tend to have low self-esteem, and they act out. They feel low about themselves and the way they seek attention, the way they seek to attract their primary object or caregiver is by negative attention or acting out so that they know that they can get in trouble. And remember, this isn't like if your child goes like, mama, 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 until you look over at him and then he reaches over and wants to touch the light socket so that you'll say something. And then you say, no, no. And then you turn around and they're like, mama, 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 mama. And then they sort of giggle. It's like a game they're playing with you. That's not what we're describing here. We're describing a child that has low self-esteem and doesn't receive the proper amount of attachment or affection, and they do not get their emotional needs met. And so the only way they know how to get their emotional needs met is to scream or yell or become angry or to just feel terrible so that someone will finally come and pick them up or pay attention to them. And the last type of attachment style is disorganized attachment. These children have a lack of attachment, and their lack of attachment is expressed by disorganized emotional behavior, such as approaching the caregiver, but with sort of their back turned. In other words, they sort of talk to themselves and have conversations with themselves, or they're very, very, very silent, and they feel as though they're in their own world, and they have not properly attached to their primary object or caregiver. So, and you can look at the body language in the last two we discussed, avoidant and disorganized. Okay. So I want to bring attention, if I may, to a book that I'm studying that brought about this topic. Actually, your questions brought about this topic. Let me go ahead and stop the screen share so that I can show you. So there's a book that I've been studying, and right now I'm studying attachment and abuse history within childhood, ages 0 to 8. And this is Treating Complex Traumatic Stress Disorders by Christine A. Courtois and Julian D. Ford. And I got this used on Amazon from you can buy used textbooks. This is from a college course that you can take at UC Berkeley. And right now I'm on page 129 right now. And the way I found out about this book is from Google Scholar, where I was reading some scholarly articles in medical journals on attachment theory as it pertains to dissociation in adults, because 100% of my private clients and a huge percentage of the survivors that are located in our Facebook safe groups, as well as our daily recovery support calls and other groups that we have, many of them, if not all of them, are dealing with early childhood trauma before the age of 8, and they're living with some level of dissociation in adulthood, whether it's predictable episodes of dissociation or they lose time. So ranging from CPTSD type symptoms where you're having emotional flashbacks and you have anxiety and other PTSD symptoms and dissociations, and your dissociation happens to be, you can sort of predict when it's going to happen. Let me give you an example. And that's ranging all the way over into the community that we have here, our greater community online that participate in different Twitter chats for those living with dissociative identity disorder, or DID, formerly known in the DSM-3, or maybe it was the DSM-4 as well, as multiple personality disorder. I believe they changed it in the DSM-4. I would have to check. Actually, I only have the DSM-5. I don't have the older ones. So those who are ranging from complex PTSD symptoms to dissociative identity disorder symptoms, that's what prompted me to want to read this book and to purchase this book. And so what they're talking about here is they're talking about the direct correlation between how you attach to your primary object from ages 0 to 8 directly correlates with how it is that you show up in the world as an adult now, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, or 70s, and the level of dissociation that you are experiencing. Let me back up a little bit and tell you what I mean by predictable dissociation, like I was mentioning a second ago. So For an example, I myself deal with CPTSD and not necessarily DID. And the reason that I know that, besides the fact that I've been to doctors and I've talked with them, but my symptoms, like my dissociation, usually it's predictable. There are some cases when it's not, when I have like 12 things coming at me at once, and some of them might be death related or grieving related or childhood related or mom related or dad related, like early childhood stuff, and it's coming at me all at once. Then I cannot really predict when I'm dissociating, and I don't really know how to bring myself back in that moment. That only happens about maybe once a year. However, my other dissociative episodes are predictable, and some of my major abuse happened. My interpersonal abuse within the context of relationship with my primary objects happened around the shower time or bath time. There were some very, very, very traumatic situations that happened in the bathroom, specifically while showering or when there were baths. And so now, to this day, whenever I take a bath, or usually it's a shower, I play music really, really loud, and I try to count the songs and sing along with the songs so that I know how long I've been in the shower, because I tend to dissociate when I'm in the shower. I can literally predict, like, I know I'll probably lose time. So I try to count the songs, and I even sometimes will make like little like hash marks on the shower door so that I know how many songs I've played, because I know that each song is usually between 3 and 5 minutes long. So I'm like, okay, if I'm going to take a 15-minute shower, then I want to make sure that I don't make it. If I make it all the way to 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hash marks, and I'm like, okay, it's time for me to get out of the shower. Like, I should already be done by now. I might have lost some more time. So that's just something that I deal with personally. Remember, like, I'm not showing up here online saying like, I have all this stuff figured out. You guys are broken and I'm the one, I know what I'm doing. That's not, I'm here and I'm healing right alongside you guys. And I think that's important for all of us to know, that all of us are on our own journey. And if there's ever any way that we can support one another, it's by letting others know that they're not alone and that we're right alongside them. And while our healing journey is separate from everyone else's, everyone has a different healing journey. It's really important that we let people know in any way that we possibly can, whether it's here on these live streams or in the comment section on the replays or in our free Facebook groups or on our affordable, daily recovery support calls, that we let people know, like, you're not alone. I'm here. I experienced that. Me too. I've had that. That's something that I recognize. Wow, that resonates with me. Those words, the shackles of shame just fall to the ground when we hear from people like, oh, wow, like, I'm not alone. These light bulbs sort of start going off, like in our subconscious, like even after the calls, or when someone posts in a group and they'll say, oh my goodness, I thought that it was just me all this time. I'm 50 something years old and I always thought it was just me. I didn't know that there were more people that experienced this the way that I did. So I hope that is helpful for you, and that you guys are experiencing that level of support that you deserve. And I have one more screen share that just sort of only shows the text, so you guys can read that for yourself if it was hard to read. And I'm going to go ahead and begin answering some of your questions as well. But this is definitely easier to read, I believe. I want to make sure this is the right one. I think this is the right one. Let me know if you guys can see the screen share, here. And thanks for your patience while I figure everything out. All right. I hope you guys can see that okay. So this just breaks down the 4 types of attachment, you guys. And then there's a note at the bottom who wrote the articles and where I found this research. I'm crediting these particular authors and researchers. So please take some time to read that amongst yourself, or take a screenshot of this if you would, please. And then while you're doing that, I'm going to read some questions. Thank you to Rhonda. Thank you to Vi. And thank you to Kira. Heroes Don't Wear Capes. Deborah. Greg. John Harvey. Katie Lee. Hunter. Tracy. And I Still Found Hope. Thanks for sending in your questions. I'm going to do the very best I can to answer all of them in the next 20 minutes, okay? I'll do the best I can. So first of all, I Still Found Hope says, how does having a mother who invalidated, enabled my abuse influence dissociating and missing red flags with my own children, or being too overprotective or hypervigilant 24/7? So this is an excellent question. And I can tell that you're quite a ways on your healing journey if you're noticing that. Not only, I noticed that you're not being overly responsible for your mother and saying that you must have done something, but you're clearly indicating that what you experienced was abuse. And I just want to encourage you that you may be farther along in your healing journey, and you may be just like right on the brink of a huge breakthrough. I Still Found Hope. I know you show up here on such a regular basis, and you're really working hard for yourself and doing healthy things for yourself. So having a mother who invalidated or enabled your abuse, I experienced that with one of my primary caregivers as well. And the reason that it is directly correlated and it directly touches and is, connected to my dissociation is because when we use deductive reasoning, we go, well, if my abuse was invalidated and enabled by one of my parents, then what does that mean about myself? What does it mean about the person I am? And what a child believes is, I must not be important. I must not matter. They must not want to see me. They must not care about me. I must not be worth protecting. If they're not going to protect me or help me, and they're just allowing this to happen, then that must mean that I am bad. And so for a child to believe that about themselves is literally destroying. And the reason that we dissociate when we feel those feelings is because they're too painful to address until we're much older. When we can sort out the fact that your mother, for instance, was abusive, and part of her abuse was that she allowed the abuse to happen. She invalidated your feelings, and she provided an environment where the abuse could exist and continue. So you living through that with your mother and then doing the absolute opposite of that, reinventing the wheel, if you will, and being overly protective and hypervigilant of your own children, what that says to me about your character is that you were so devastated and it was so painful to live your human experience as a child, that what you're trying to do is you're trying to do the absolute opposite for your own children and make sure that they have everything that you never had. So I believe that it's directly correlated with your dissociation, because the painful feelings of knowing that you were just not worth protecting and not lovable as a child, which is absolutely untrue, by the way. It was simply abuse. But that's the lie that it will tell us, is that we're unlovable and that we're not worth protecting. What you've done is you've remembered that feeling so well that it's ingrained in you, and you want to do anything and everything that you possibly can to make sure that your children will never, ever, ever, ever experience that. And so, of course, we're going to overcorrect a little bit, right? Because we are truly reinventing the wheel every single day because we didn't have a healthy role model. So I just want to encourage you, I Still Found Hope, to keep doing what you're doing and keep being the excellent mom that you are. I mean, my son, I did the same thing. I was the overprotective mother. In fact, my son tells me that I wasn't a mother, I was a smother. And I smothered him. I did. I had him text me every single day in high school that he had arrived school safely on the bus. You can't make this stuff up, you guys. Like, I seriously made my teenage son text me every day to let me know that the bus arrived at school safely. So I'm with you. I feel you. I've done it. And he's a healthy, contributing member of society now, even though he calls me a smother. And I'm like, yep, I'll wear that like a crown, because guess what? I didn't allow you to be abused. So I'm going to take the lesser of the two evils. Do I wish that I would have been a well-balanced parent that wasn't hypervigilant and that was not a smother? Yes, I wish I would have done that, but I didn't know how because I didn't have healthy role models. So I would like to just share with you, I still found hope that it's perfectly acceptable for you to be protective. And if you choose to, ease up on that a little bit and maybe just find your happy medium and not, overcorrect and go the whole other side of the spectrum, then that's your choice. But I guarantee you, your children are going to love you and they're going to be grateful that you didn't allow them to be abused, especially when they're older and when it's age appropriate. If they ever do find out that you lived through such terror, they might be grateful that you, and probably astonished that you found a way to raise them in a healthy manner. So I give you high fives for doing a good job. Thank you for the question. Tracy says, I feel such an attachment to my therapist that I feel emptiness and pain when I leave my sessions. I may never see her again or something. What can I do? You know what, Tracy? This is very, 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 very common. The place for us to heal our attachment trauma is within the context of a therapeutic relationship of a licensed practitioner who is hopefully trauma informed, along with anyone that you meet inpatient, along with maybe a psychiatrist, along with peer support, support groups, other peers that may have lived through. I mean, we need a team, right? We don't have the money for a team, but we exhaust all of the free resources we can, and we exhaust all of the affordable resources we can, and we find the help we need, and we heal those deep, deep, deep attachment wounds. And it is possible. The feelings that you're describing, Tracy, of pain and emptiness when you leave your sessions, those are healthy and they are human. You are in the midst of healing attachment trauma. Now, how can we cope in healthier ways? Well, we can communicate these needs in writing, perhaps to write down how it is that we're feeling in a journal on a daily basis, and then gauge when it is safe to share with our therapist. We want to share with them how we're feeling on a daily basis about leaving, and the feelings of longing or emptiness or pain or the fears that we have around us never seeing them again. And it is perfectly healthy, and it is clinically appropriate for you to discuss these things with your therapist. And I can't stress enough how important it is for you to be with a trauma-informed practitioner. So what you can do is communicate those needs, whether it's in writing or verbally or in some appropriate way that you feel safe doing with your practitioner, so they know how deeply it is, how deep the wounds are, and how much of that attachment trauma you're actually able to heal and address in your sessions and when you're leaving. I have a colleague of mine who recently was feeling the same way, and she was experiencing an extra amount of pain and sort of grieving and these feelings of longing and uncertainty. And she really felt like she needed to cry, or perhaps maybe she needed a hug. And so she was afraid to hug or ask for a hug for fear that her therapist might think that that was asking too much. And I suggested, well, perhaps maybe you could email your therapist and let her know that you feel like you might need a hug. And would that be okay? And she did. She emailed the therapist, and the therapist emailed her back. Mind you, this woman is a trauma-informed therapist who's amazing, and she trains other therapists in different trauma modalities. I mean, she's one of the she's a leading trauma therapist in New York City. Like, she's just incredible. But this therapist responded and said, absolutely, you can give me a hug. And that helped my colleague feel better at the time. She just needed to know that someone was there when she was having those longing feelings, those feelings of fear, and as though she was never going to see her therapist again. And sometimes, when I travel, even though I don't travel out of the country very often, but when I travel, my private clients, they message me and leave me voice messages almost in tears. They're afraid of my plane crashing. They're afraid they're never going to see me again. They write me emails as though it's the last email they're ever going to send me. And it's because we're healing attachment wounds within the context of the coaching we're doing together. So I just want to encourage you to continue that open line of communication. as you feel safe, because it is clinically appropriate, especially if you're healing attachment trauma with your therapist. Hunter says, hello, Athena. Hello, Hunter. High five, recovery buddy. He says, can denial of abuse make dissociation worse as you are forced back into your shell and the emotions can rebuild? Let me pull this apart. So Hunter wants to know if denial of our abuse makes dissociation worse. My gut response is yes, and this is why. When we are unable to accept the reality of our abuse, then we're in a place of fantasy. And fantasy is one of those places where we go, where we just need to feel good. We need to feel better. And so like where I go, like sometimes if I dissociate when I'm driving, I go off into some place where I'm thinking of the different groups we have on Facebook and all of the members of those groups, or I'm thinking of my colleagues, I'm thinking of my peers, I'm thinking of you all here that I get to spend time with every single week that I've gotten to know over the last 4 years. And I'll sort of trace it back, like where did I go and why did I do that? And what happened was I was getting ready to sort of maybe feel something really, really deeply about something that was very triggering for me within the context of an interpersonal relationship like this week. And then since that's so painful, I end up dissociating. And so when we intentionally address the reality of how our abuse went down and who all was involved and who enabled it and what happened, etc., it can cause us to sort of go to a fantasy place and sort of, numb stuff, avoid, and then not deal with the trauma. And that can keep us from healing. But you described it well when you said that you're forced back into your shell and then the emotions can build. Because then when we're done dissociating, we're done going to a fantasy place, whether that's through listening to music or watching a movie or reading a book or playing a video game or just going for a drive, then we're dealing with reality again. And then reality is very, very painful. And then if reality is too painful, we'll dissociate again. So it's kind of a cycle that we are perpetuating. So I love that you're asking about denial, and I love that you're being intentional about wanting to address everything and accepting the reality. You're doing really wonderful in your recovery, Hunter, and I just want to encourage you to keep on going. You know who I skipped over, you guys? I skipped over recovery with Cresta. I skipped over you, Cresta. If someone could tag recovery with Cresta and let her know that I'm talking to her and that I didn't forget about her and I accidentally skipped her earlier. Recovery with Cresta says, how do you heal the great attachment trauma if it was incest? I'm so happy that someone has brought up incest, because so many of us here on this channel have experienced sexual abuse. And I know that YouTube has sort of like black flagged me, and they flagged this account, and which is why we've made like a total of like 48 cents over the course of 4 years. We're not able to monetize anything, and they delete my videos if I mention sex abuse, especially as it pertains to children. And so I want you to know, Recovery with Cresta, that it is possible to heal attachment trauma if there was incest involved. It's just going to take a longer amount of time, and it's going to take an amazing trauma-informed therapist, including possibly a psychiatrist who may be able to help you with any type of mood stabilizers, SSRIs. I'm not for or against medication if it's something that you need and it helps you to succeed in life and to feel like you're able to cope, then I'm all for it. I'm not saying that people need to take drugs if they're against drugs. I'm just saying that the way we heal deep attachment trauma when there was incest involved is through the context of a very, very healthy and safe, therapeutically appropriate relationship with a trauma-informed practitioner that knows that any maladaptive coping strategies that we have present day, like drugs, alcohol, self-harm, suicidal ideation, eating disorders, over-exercising, busyness, gambling, I could go down the list. We could sit here all night and I could name all of the maladaptive coping strategies that we have. We absolutely need to have a therapist that understands that the maladaptive coping strategies that are going on present day are directly connected to the incest. And we need to be able to discuss with them the memories we do have, whether they're fragmented or not, surrounding the incest, the enabling that went on. In other words, who do you think possibly knew about it and allowed it to happen, or created an environment where no one talked about it, of secrecy and silence, and they further stigmatized it, and how long that kept you stuck. And then sort of realize like how old you were when you finally started realizing that there were some deep, 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 deep wounds that needed to be healed. And what's going to be the most helpful ingredient in this healing journey of this attachment trauma where there's incest involved, Krista, is patience with yourself. You absolutely are not going to be able to rush this. There's going to need to be some journaling. You might even need some somatic experiencing or some EMDR, depending on your level of dissociation. Remember, if you are living with unpredictable dissociative episodes, EMDR might not be the best thing for you until you have met with a trauma-informed practitioner who also does perhaps touch therapy or somatic experiencing or trauma-informed yoga or other like body work and expressive modalities like we talked about before, like non-dominant hand and art therapy and other forms of things that involve your body and moving your body. We need you to be able to be present in your body, Krista, long enough for you to grieve and feel your feelings within the context of a healthy relationship with a trauma-informed practitioner that's able to heal that original attachment that was destroyed. And you can heal. It's going to take a long time. Your recovery with Krista, you might be a coach or a trauma-informed practitioner. It's going to take a long time, but it is possible. And just patience is going to be really, really key. I hope that was helpful. And sorry, I accidentally skipped over you. Katie Lee says, is there a difference in what impact attachment trauma will have on a child depending on if the trauma is from a mother or a father? Katie Lee, in my personal and professional experience, it will have an impact. And what I mean by that, Katie Lee, is there is some severe attachment trauma, for instance. It's very complicated. It's complicated grief, first of all, in addition to attachment trauma is what we're going to deal with. So let's say a person who is born female has a mother who is absent and does not meet their emotional needs, and there is neglect involved, and the neglect leads to sexual abuse by a male. And remember, this person was born female. So this can lead to different sexual preferences, and there will be cognitive dissonance that is present with, do I prefer males or females? No one is safe. I don't want to be with a male because of what happened to me sexually when I was at a very young age, but I don't want to be with a female either because they're not safe and they don't care. They don't know how to support me. And so there's a confusion there with regards to sexual preference. And then just clinically, I have a client, for instance, that was born male and endured a tremendous amount of verbal abuse and other forms of abuse by the mother, and then a severe emotional abuse by a father, identifies as male, but was sexually abused by a male in their adolescent years. And so now they identify as male. They're in the context of a heterosexual relationship right now, but now that they're processing all of their trauma from their sexual abuse, they're realizing that they may identify with being female. And so they're going through the process of looking into transition from male to female so that they can enjoy a sexual relationship with a male because that's what they think that they want. And yet the abuse that they endured, the most of the abuse and the neglect came from a female. And so they don't want anything to do with a female, but they want to become a female just so they can feel feminine and experience the good parts of being feminine and experience sex within the context of of a male-female relationship. They want to be the female. So I believe that depending on the gender that you're born and if the abuse was sexual, if there was sexual abuse involved and there was attachment trauma with the mother or the father, I do believe that it plays a role. That's my personal and professional opinion. Although I've gotten some major, major, major vitriol on this channel, where there are a lot of people that don't agree. They believe that abuse plays no part whatsoever on sexual orientation and sexual preference. And I don't agree. I was born female and I identify now with being female, but there was a time in my life when I was terrified of men and I only wanted to experiment and be around women. And I thought that perhaps that I wanted to be involved in a sexual relationship with women because men felt very unsafe to me because my father didn't do anything about my abuse that was happening and he allowed it all to happen. So I sort of vilified the whole male situation. And then, I don't know, I sought some trauma therapy and then it ended up switching for me personally. So there's a little bit of my story, a little bit of a couple different clients, and I hope that was helpful. But please, leave your comments, keep it classy, be kind. We're all adults here and we want to be kind to one another. These are topics that really get heated and people have very, 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 very strong opinions. And I'm very respectful of anyone's opinions. And all I ask is that we be respectful of one another and be respectful of everyone here on the channel. So John Harvey says, I can have issue with attachment. And when I do try, but I failed in a relationship, it hit me hard. It takes me a while just to try again. And I lose trust in people. Yeah, John Harvey, when your abuse happens at a very young age and you haven't attached to your primary caregivers in a secure way, then it can be very, very, very difficult and even terrifying to attach to other people in a healthy way. And it can feel like too much or not enough or all or nothing. So please be kind to yourself. And if possible, seek the counsel of someone who is trauma informed so that you can know that you're not alone and that it's natural for you to be struggling with some of the things that you're struggling with, what you've described. Deborah says, if you have disorganized attachment, are you more susceptible to dissociation or DID? You know what, Deborah? I'm still reading the book, this book by Christine Courtois and Julian Ford. I think I said Janine Ford earlier, my bad, but I'm not able to answer your question right now, Deborah. I'll continue studying and reading and we'll come back and we'll visit this again next week, but I don't want to lead you astray in the wrong direction. I'm not sure if those living with a disorganized attachment style are more susceptible to DID. My gut feeling would say yes, but I'm not confident enough to answer your question. I don't want to lead you astray. So I'm sorry about that, but I just want to be honest. Heroes Don't Wear Capes says, I've got anxiety around getting too attached to my therapist, not because I've had this problem, but because it's a common problem that I want to avoid. It's blocking me from truly being vulnerable. Heroes Don't Wear Capes, two things could be happening here. One, you could be on an intuitive level in your body sensing that this person might not be a safe person. And I don't know your therapist, so I can't say. Or you could just be afraid to connect. One of those two things or a combination of the two could be happening, but you could put out feelers, perhaps, in the groups or here on Monday nights, ask others how they reached out and connected with their therapist and what are some of the things they shared and what would be safe, etc. But my experience, Heroes Don't Wear Capes, is if I feel tremendously anxious around my therapist and afraid to be myself and afraid to express my feelings, one of those two things are happening. Either I'm sensing that this person might be a toxic person and that perhaps I shouldn't share, or I'm just afraid of being vulnerable because I don't want them to run away or get sick of me, or I don't want to exhaust them. So I think what you're doing here by sharing and being vulnerable, you say it's blocking you from being vulnerable. Perhaps after one of the videos on a Monday night, maybe you could journal about this and then bring your journal into your next therapy appointment and just simply share with your therapist where you're at. And if your therapist is trauma informed, they're going to really gain some valuable insight on where you're at in your healing journey. And this could really be a breakthrough for you. I mean, when my clients share with me vulnerably the things they're struggling with that I had no idea about. For instance, I have a client that's struggling with sexual intimacy, and I had no idea they were struggling with sexual intimacy. It was never a topic they even brought up. We only talked about finances and food issues and issues with friends that didn't want to hang out and go places anymore. And knowing that they were having issues around sexual intimacy, we decided that we were going to tackle those issues. And then when we tackled the sexual intimacy issues, all the other issues fell into place and they were non-issues. So, I mean, I was given valuable insight just because they decided to journal about it and share with me what was going on. So I hope that was helpful. And if that doesn't feel safe, don't do it. But that's my recommendation. Kira says, what about a child who actively watches over and tries to protect and soothe the caregiver? See, Kira, that's a good question. And what's happening there is usually children that are trying to soothe and take care of the caregiver, usually that's not happening when they're a baby. That's usually happening when they're probably upwards of, 7 or 8 years old. And that the situation that comes to mind of what you described, Kira, is there's domestic violence in the home. They've seen that the primary object or the primary caregiver is being physically abused or is showing physical or emotional signs of distress, or there's alcohol or drugs involved. So that is going to cause a lot of problems. And the symptoms that are going on like here and now, like present day, are going to need to be addressed in the caregiver, the primary object, before we can address healing from the child. In fact, Child Protective Services may need to get involved in a situation like that. So I experienced something similar, but again, and I've had several clients that have experienced what you're describing, and it is as a result of drugs, alcohol, domestic violence, weapons, abuse in all forms on the primary object. So the child is feeling like they need to protect the parent. And then the primary object is actually through words, actions, or withholding of love, making the child responsible for their emotional needs, which is a whole nother video. Like so painful. Ooh, Harriet. Oh, you know what? I have that screen share up still. Let me take this off so I can actually look at you guys. I didn't realize that I wasn't looking at you guys the whole time. Hi, I'm back. So Harriet, if you could put up the video on ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences, you guys, there's a list of 10 adverse childhood experiences. And if you take the ACEs questionnaire at aces2high.com, then you can get your ACEs score. And then your ACEs score helps you know how you can feel empowered and become empowered in adulthood, so that you know what you experienced and how it can affect you and what can show up in your body, and also what can show up in your mind, what damage is done to our brain and our bodies and our digestive system and everything else. I mean, there are all these stats, and it's all research backed. I mean, the research is very, very, very clear. Children who experience adverse childhood experiences, especially ages 0 to 8, I mean, they're highly likely to have suicidal ideation, heart disease, cancer, high blood pressure, diabetes, autoimmune disease, everything like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, you name all of the autoimmune chronic illness. They're so many percentage more likely to experience that as a result of direct result of adverse childhood experiences. So it's super important that we recognize that. Vi says, I think when I was a baby, I was uncomfortable when my caregivers returned. If they returned, is that why there is deep abandonment issues with those I'm close to, even if it isn't? Let me put my feet up really quick here. Let me think. I was uncomfortable when my caregivers returned, if they returned. Is that why there is deep abandonment issues with those I'm close to? I think there could be a lot of reasons why we can have abandonment issues, but if in fact there was an unsecure or disorganized attachment, any type of not a non-secure attachment, that directly relates to abandonment issues that we have in adulthood, and it is directly connected to dissociation. So I would love to do an entire video on abandonment issues. In fact, I might have done one on abandonment issues. Harriet, if you could pop up a video, I think we did one on abandonment issues. I think it's called like, Can We Heal Our Abandonment Issues from Childhood? Is what it's called. Yeah. Vi, I would love to go deeper into this topic. But that could be the attachment video that we did, as well as Can We Heal Our Childhood Abandonment Issues? I think that will give like more insight. We sort of go down a list of ways that we can heal that and help that. Which, by the way, Vi, I wanted to give you high fives on quitting smoking, and I wanted to ask you how your quitting smoking journey is, because we're all giving you high fives and we're cheering you on. And it's been a few weeks since you let us all know that you were quitting smoking, but I would love to know. Rhonda says, I've never been good with trips or moving, and I would prefer to have people leave forever, similar to death, to avoid going through hurt feelings. I never had coping tools to handle otherwise. The first time on a trip without my mother to a place halfway around the world with a group, I was dropped off at an airport alone hours before posted meeting time so she could leave for her trip with her boyfriend. Oh my goodness, Rhonda. Oh my goodness. That is terrifying for a child. That is terrifying for a child, Rhonda. I just want to validate how terrifying that must have been for you. And I can only imagine what must have been going through your mind. And I mean, I could go on and share situations with you that were similar to this in my personal experience, but I just, in an effort to keep brevity in mind, I just want to let you guys know, like, this rings a lot of bells for me. And I mean, I have major fear of loss, major abandonment issues, especially with women who are older than me. It affects me. It doesn't affect me as much now as it did before. Like, I've made like obvious progress, but it still affects me. It still affects me, like, seriously. And it can cause me to freeze. And in the situation, Rhonda, with a toxic person in my life, I tend to fawn. I freeze, and then I try to like work it all out and do whatever I can and hustle for my worth and, try to make sure they never leave me, type of a thing. But if it's with a healthier individual, I'm kind of just like I freeze maybe temporarily, but I'm just kind of like, all right. And like, it's more of like a flea. Like, it's still traumatizing for me, but I'm able to get over it faster. So I'm definitely was not good with trips or moving as well. I went to 6 different elementary schools, and I was yanked up in the middle of the night, moved to somewhere I'd never been before, into one of my abuser's homes who had abusive children. And I mean, it started a whole, oh my gosh. I mean, it was very traumatizing. And I tried to mention it to my primary caregiver, and she was just like, just get over yourself. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I moved around. I bounced around from foster home to foster home. It's no big deal. And I, like, in my mind, I'm going, yeah, but look at you. Like, you haven't healed your trauma. Like, you're still repeating old patterns. You're still in abusive relationships. Like, you haven't healed yet. Like, I don't want that to be my life. I don't want to never heal. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you bounced around from foster home to foster home. And yeah, that could be true, but it doesn't invalidate my experience of being like, that was freaking traumatic. Like, I'm trying to work through it. Like, you're just trying to be like, get over it. You're good. You're fine. You're an adult now. It's like, it doesn't work that way. You know, like, it just does not work that way, you guys. I have one last question up here somewhere. I know we're over time, you guys, a couple minutes over. Greg says, I have a really hard time managing my finances. How does my complex PTSD affect my impulse issues? Oh my goodness, Greg. First of all, Greg, thank you for being here. I don't know if you're new, but if you are, welcome. And if you're not new and I just haven't ever said hi to you, then hello. Great question. I don't know anyone living with complex PTSD symptoms that isn't struggling financially on manage their finance, or how to keep it all okay. This is the reason. When one of the symptoms of complex PTSD, one of the symptoms of developmental trauma, attachment trauma, complex trauma, is that our executive functioning is affected. Our ability to reason and make lists and sort of navigate through long things, i.e. finances, we find ourselves like, it's kind of like when I was sharing, I think, was I sharing with you or I was sharing on our call? Sometimes when I'm reading this book, some of this stuff is so triggering for me, and like, it's like devastating that I didn't receive like the care and the love that I deserve, that I find myself needing to reread it like 4 times. I dissociate. I literally dissociate because it's too painful. And so Greg, like, I don't know the extent of your abuse, or if there were, like, what your family of origin taught you about money or people who had money. Like, I don't know if you come from a home where all of your basic needs were met for food, shelter, clothing, and then your emotional needs were met, like, you know, love, acceptance, approval, kindness, like that type of thing. I don't know what your situation was, but regardless, you know, you might have come from a situation where you guys struggled financially, and that meant that you didn't have enough food. And then people that had money were like those people, and they were the bad people. And so you might struggle financially because subconsciously you don't want to turn into those people or the bad people that you were taught about when you were younger, because it was like all their fault that you didn't have what you needed. But not really. It's just like what the family of origin sort of tells us. So there could be a host of different reasons why managing finances can be triggering or cause dissociation and impulse issues. So our impulses, see, our prefrontal cortex and what helps us to make calculated, wise decisions, it was affected when we were younger. And so, like, if you look at a brain scan, like a brain scan over here of a healthy child brain, and a brain scan here of a child who was neglected or abused or had ongoing trauma, you will see that this brain is smaller than the healthy brain. And in the, like, hippocampus and like the amygdala and even the prefrontal cortex, like, there are like holes where there should be like stuff going on. And it takes time to create new neural pathways. That's why it's important that we see trauma-informed practitioners that use trauma modalities. If you guys haven't listened to the Trauma Therapist podcast, it's an amazing podcast. The guy's name is Guy McPherson. He's incredible. You can find it on iTunes, the Trauma Therapist podcast. And he talks a lot about different, like, there are questions about money that come up on a few of the different episodes that I've listened to. and our impulse issues. So we don't, so Greg, if you've ever looked into arrested development, like arrested development is when our development is stifled or we're sort of held back in where we need to go. And what causes arrested development is when you're so busy trying to survive as a young child that you don't have time to develop at the pace of other children. And so when you're a child and you're learning about impulse control and healthy choices and saving and allowance or setting aside 10% for this and 10% for that, and then 80% is what you spend, or, you know, if you didn't have that healthy role model, then you're going to struggle in your adult years, and you're going to, since you were busy trying to either manage the emotional needs of other people, maybe there was alcohol, maybe there was absenteeism, maybe there's a broken home, maybe one of the family members was incarcerated, you know, maybe there was verbal abuse, maybe, you know, every night at the dinner table it was very, 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 very stressful. Maybe you saw your mom or your dad handling the checkbook and trying to pay the bills every month and screaming and yelling at each other. And so we make deals with ourselves when we're younger, and it arrests our development. It keeps us from developing healthy habits in those areas of like finance or food or relationships or, you know, personal hygiene. These are all things that we don't pay attention to and learn at a healthy pace the way other children do, because we're too busy surviving or navigating the landmines of a toxic home. So I hope that was helpful, you guys. I know we're over time, but I just wanted to thank you guys for being here and for choosing to spend this time with us. Gosh, you guys are all almost still here. This is amazing. So thanks for choosing to make your recovery journey a priority tonight. And I hope that you'll, if you've been here for almost 4 years every week, or if this is your first time, I hope you'll come back week after week. We talk about healing from childhood trauma. We talk about, you know, healing our interpersonal relationships now as a result of our childhood trauma. We talk about all topics relating to complex trauma, whether that's, you know, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, religious abuse, cult abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse, all types of abuse. And if you experienced abuse at a very young age and you're struggling with life as an adult, then maybe being around a whole bunch of us that have sort of been there and that are healing would be helpful for you. So whether this is your first time here with us or you're back for the for the 1,000th time, or however, well, let me see, how many weeks is that over the course of 4 years? Like the 200th time, I guess, 200th time. If you're here for the over 200th time, or this is your first time, thank you for being here. And I'll see you back here, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, next Monday and every single Monday. And we'll continue on the topic of attachment trauma and dissociation. And I look forward to answering your questions. So I hope you guys take really excellent care of yourselves this week, because you're worth it. And again, if you would like to be plugged into a free Facebook group, or if you would like to receive affordable care on a daily basis, daily recovery support calls with trauma-informed practitioners and a group of other survivors of trauma that are just there to receive support and give support, then please email Lisa at cptsdfoundation.org, or just head over to the website, cptsdfoundation.org, and click on the tab in the menu that says Daily Calls. Or you could just send an email to Lisa at cptsdfoundation.org and let her know you'd like to get plugged into a free group. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.